Hare Krishna, we'll begin with the pranam mantras. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Aham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sa Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Tarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabde Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayine Prabhave Namaha Madhurya Jvala Premadhya Swarupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Gauravani Sri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namagora Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagyamute Vipralambar Sambodh Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namine Gaur Sakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaur Virba Bhumistvam Nirdista Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarva Goma Shri Shri Jagannathayate Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo 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 Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaurtuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Jayatam Sutopango Mama Mandir Matir Gati Matsadvasa Padambojo Shri Radha Madan Mohanao Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadaha Srimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Srimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prishtali Bhigevyamano Samamin Srimam Rasarasarambi Vamsi Vata Satastita Harshan Venu Kurvanir Gopi Shri Gopinata Shri Stanaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyantasto Hi Abhadrani Vidunoti Shrihitsatam Nashtaprayasho Bhadresho Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Slokir Bhakti Bhavati Naishtagi Hare Krishna and welcome back after a short break. So we are continuing our discussion in chapter 15 of Canto 1, which is titled as The Pandavas Retire Timely. So far what has happened in this chapter is we have seen that Arjuna has returned back from Dwarka and he is very morose, and Yudhishthira asking him question about what is the reason for of such kind of feeling. So Arjuna, and before that, he asked about all the Yadavas. He was asked about Krishna and Balaram and all these relatives of Dwarka Dham. And then Arjuna starts replying in this particular chapter. So Arjuna expresses that he is actually feeling this strong separation of Krishna, because Krishna had left this material world. So that has been discussed in verse 1 to 6. It's Arjuna's strong feeling of separation from Krishna. And then Arjuna recalls from 7 to 17 about his favors and protection. So the first verse is saying that by the mercy of Lord Sri Krishna, he was able to win the hands of Draupadi. He was able to defeat Indra, and Bhima was able to defeat Jarasandha, and the offenders of the Pandavas, that is all the Kauravas, they were killed by the arrangements of Krishna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So, and then he also is talking about that they were saved from the anger of Durvasa Rishi, and by the powers which were given by Krishna to Arjuna, Arjuna could even defeat Lord Shiva, who is undefeatable, practically undefeatable. But Arjuna could do it because it was Krishna's mercy. So these are the things which is Arjuna is recalling or remember that he is missing Krishna's association, and now he is remembering that how Krishna empowered him, and only by the empowerment of Krishna, or only by the Lord's mercy, he was able to defeat everyone, or practically do invincible things. So this is what is discussed in the 17 verses. And then he is remembering intimate moments, and he is feeling void. That is 18 to 23. This is what we discussed in the last session. And he is saying that Krishna was so kind to him that he also tolerated all his offenses. He was sometimes calling him like a friend, he's teasing him, insulting him. In many ways, they had friendly exchanges. But Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, still he tolerated all those things. So this is what is remembering in 18 to 23. And then in the 22nd and 23rd verses is discussing about that how before Krishna leaving this planet, the Yadus were they left, and the way they left was very astonishing. So we see that Krishna's pastimes, they are all actually wonderful, and that is discussed in Bhagavad-Gita in one line, that Janma karma cha me divyam. Krishna is saying this to Arjuna, that my birth and my activities are divyam, or transcendental. And one who understands this transcendental nature of Krishna's birth and activity, tattva deham punarjanmayati. So that person who understands the position of Krishna, that means who accepts the supremacy of the Lord, so that person certainly is going to perform devotional service. So that person will perform devotional service, and at the end of life, he'll go back to Godhead. He'll go back to the planet where Krishna is coming from. Basically, he will go back to Golokam. So tattva deham punarjanmanaiti means he will not take birth again, but he will come mameti Arjuna. He will come back to my own planet. So in this section which we are going to start today is the verses from 24 to 31. So after remembering Krishna's intimate exchanges with Arjuna, what does Arjuna do? So this is a very important section where Arjuna is going to focus on Lord's instruction and attain transcendence. So Krishna is there, is not there, he's not present in this material world. So this is the same situation as what we have. We also don't have the direct association of Krishna. So what do we do? So this is what Prabhupada stresses in these purports in these verses, that what one should do when Krishna is not physically present. So Vapu and Vani, these are the two words Prabhupada has taught us. Vani means words and Vapu means physical presence. So in physical presence, we have association, and we can deal with that personality, whether it's a guru or Krishna, in different ways. We can serve, we can have intimate exchanges. But if the person is not there, the personality is not present in front of us, so how do we associate with that person? So that has been explained in verse 24 to 31. That Arjuna now focuses on Lord's instructions, and just by focusing on Lord's instructions which were given to him, he attains transcendence. He goes back to Godhead. So this is the instruction, very important subject which has been discussed here, because this is applicable to all of us. Krishna is not present in front of us, and most of the time we don't have personal association of our Guru. All of us. So what do we do in those situations? So we hear from them. We hear the Vani. And by hearing the Vani, because the words of Krishna and Krishna are non-different. Krishna, the name Krishna and Krishna himself, they are absolute. So because of that absolute nature, if we just utter the word Krishna, means Krishna is present with us through the sound. So let's read verse number 24. So the verse 24 is talking about the supreme will. So all things are happening is because of the supreme will of Krishna. So let's read the verse and the translation by Srila Prabhupada. Prayena itad bhagavata ishvarasya vichesitam mitho nignanti bhutani bhavayanti cha yanmitaha. Factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and at other time they protect one another. So what context this verse is there? This verse is there with the context of the previous verse. In the previous verse, if we see, it's talking about the Yadus. The Yadus were cursed. So the Yadus is the family members of the Krishna. So they cannot be cursed because they are very powerful. But by Krishna's arrangement, what happened? The Krishna's pastimes, earthly pastime has to end. So the Yadus then, they were cursed by the Brahmanas. So all of us know the pastime, and they became intoxicated. Now they are close associates of Krishna in Dwarka. Still they became intoxicated. They fought among each other with sticks. So it looks like it is a stick, but it is an iron rod actually. And they killed each other with those iron rods. And now all but 4 or 5 of them are dead. So all of them are dead except 4 or 5, and they are all gone. So the continuation of this verse is then Arjuna is saying that this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord. So this pastime was because Lord desired the Yadus to live this planet in this particular way. Therefore, this pastime was enacted. So factually, this is all due to the supreme will of the Lord, the personality of Godhead. Sometimes people kill one another, and other times they protect one another. So Prabhupada talks about the will of the Lord. So he's in the purport. Prabhupada continues that discussion, or he's showing that how the will of the Lord works. So Prabhupada says that the law of nature works under the direction of Supreme. So however Krishna desires, the material nature has to work that way. So according to anthropologists, anthropology is a scientific study of humanity concerned with human behavior, human biology and societies in both the present and the past, including past human species. So it's a study of the behavior of human, how the human behaves. So all of this, so that is anthropologist. So according to the anthropologist, there is nature's laws. So they don't believe in Krishna. Scientific, the science or scientists, they don't have any idea about Krishna. So knowing Krishna is also a very important subject matter, because not everybody can understand Krishna. Therefore Krishna is saying Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam. Not everybody can understand the position of Krishna. It is only by the mercy of the Lord, and the above that is the mercy of the devotees. Only by the mercy of the Lord and his devotees one can understand. So we need that mercy. Unless when we have that mercy, we will not be able to understand Krishna. So there is a nature's law of struggle for existence and survival of the fittest. So this is what the scientists, they see. They only see the external world. They don't understand how this world and why this world is designed. It is just like seeing a book. If we can see a physical book. So a book is not just a physical book. A book is a physical book plus the contents of the book. These are two different things. Right? The content of the book is more important than the book itself, the physical nature of the book. So the scientists, they study the physical book, the book itself. They don't understand the reason behind why this book has been written. So this is what is the scientists studying, and they are seeing that in this world, everywhere there is a struggle, and there is a struggle for the survival of the fittest. But Prabhupada said, but they do not know that behind the law of the nature, the supreme direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, behind the law of the nature is the supreme direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So behind this, anything which we see is actually Krishna or his will. And unless his will is there, unless he desires unless the Lord desires and gives permission, the things are not going to work in that way. So in Bhagavad-Gita it is confirmed that the law of nature is executed in the direction of the Lord, and that is given in the 9th chapter, which is 9th chapter, verse number 10. So let's see this verse, BG 9.10, and that is Maya Adhyakshena Prakriti Suyatesha Characharam Hetu Nanena Kondaya Jagadbhi Parivartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies. So Krishna has multiple energies, and this material nature is one of his inferior energies. So there are superior energies and there are inferior energies. Superior energies are the energies which are conscious. So living beings are also, or living entities are also energies of Krishna. So we all are energies of Krishna. But we come under superior energy. This is discussed in 7th chapter, verse number 4 and 5. And this material world is the inferior energy. So this material nature, Krishna is saying, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction. It is working under Krishna's direction. O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rules, the manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So we know how the universal creation and annihilation happens. Creation and then annihilation, then again recreation, and this goes on eternally. But this is all happening under Krishna's will. So this is what Krishna is saying, Maya Adhyakshena. Adhyaksha. Maya means mine. Under my direction, this thing is going on. This creation and annihilation. Whenever, therefore, there is peace in the world, it must be known that that is due to the goodwill of the Lord. And whenever there is upheaval in the world, it is also due to the supreme will of the Lord. Not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. So this is a very important understanding from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, where everything we understand is happening by Krishna's will. And when we understand this point, that By Krishna's will only everything is going on in this world. So whether it is good times or whether it is bad times, both are his will. At that time, what happens? We become peaceful. Right? We become peaceful. Because we know that there is somebody in charge. And that person who is in charge is a very loving person. Right? Gyatva mam shanti michati. Right? The peace formula 529. Bhoktaram yagyatapasan sarva loke maheshwaram suhidam sarva bhutanam gyatva mam shanti michati. So one becomes peaceful when we understand that this person, Krishna, who is in charge, whether something good is happening or whether something bad is going on, is all happening by his will. And that particular person is a ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifice and austerities, and the Supreme Lord of all planets and demigods, and he is the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. So this is important. When we understand that he is our only well-wisher, like Srila Prabhupada will say, you are our well-wisher. So even a devotee, of course he is pure devotee of Srila Prabhupada, of Lord Krishna, but even a devotee is basically, he is a well-wisher. He is a well-wisher of everyone. So therefore Prabhupada used to write, you are ever well-wisher. He is always, even if he, in his class, sometimes we hear him speaking like rascal or something like, but that is out of compassion. That is not out of some being angry on somebody and is chastising. No, it's not. It's out of compassion for the living entity. He can say rascal. We cannot. Because we don't have that compassion for that living entity so much. We might have a little bit or more, but not as Srila Prabhupada. He is acting in the platform of soul. So he is a real well-wisher of all the living beings. So similarly, Krishna, over here, is a benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities. When somebody understands, then what happens? Attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So then that person will not be affected by the miseries, material miseries going around, situations, bad times, good times, whatever, ups and downs in life. This person who understands that Krishna is my real well-wisher. So I must take shelter of Krishna. Whenever I'm in, of course, not only in difficulties, but whether it is good times or bad times. So not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. Whenever, therefore, there is a disobedience of the established rules enacted by the Lord, there is a war between man and nation. So whenever we don't follow the rules that is set by the Lord, Supreme Lord, then all these wars, and different situations in this world which is going on currently, we see all these things. The surest way to the path of peace, therefore, is dovetailing everything to the established rules of the Lord. So when we follow the rules and regulations given by the Supreme Lord, basically we follow his instruction, then what happens? Then we can attain peace. The established rules is that whatever we do, whatever we eat, whatever we sacrifice, or whatever we give in charity must be done in the full satisfaction of the Lord, to the full satisfaction of the Lord. So basically all the activities which we do must be done with such a consciousness that ultimately we want to satisfy the Supreme. The established rule is that whatever we do, so this we covered. No one should do anything, eat anything, sacrifice anything, or give anything in charity against the will of the Lord. Discretion is the better part of the valor, and one must learn how to discriminate between actions which may be pleasing to the Lord and those which may not be pleasing to the Lord. So these actions must be done according to the instructions given by the Lord himself and the devotees of the Lord, means the spiritual master. An action is thus judged by the Lord's pleasure or displeasure. This is a very important line, that any action, it's a good question to ask before doing an action, that is it going to please the Lord? Is it going to please Krishna? If it is going to please Krishna, then we do it. If it is not going to please Krishna, we don't do it. So now the question is that, how do we know it's going to please Krishna or not? So that is, we actually go to spiritual master or devotees. If it is going to please the devotees, the pure devotees of the Lord, then that means Krishna will be also pleased. So that is the way we act. There is no room for personal whims. We must always be guided by the pleasure of the Lord. Such action is called as Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam, BG 2250, or actions performed which are linked with the Supreme Lord. That is the art of doing things perfectly. So in chapter 2, Krishna gives like two definitions of yoga. One, he gives defined yoga in 250, which Prabhupada is talking about over here. Yoga means karmasu kaushalam. So yoga is art of work. This is verse number 50. And in another definition of yoga is given in 2.48. So let's see both the definition of yoga. Yoga means linking with the Lord, and this is defined by Krishna in two verses, two different definitions. So this is the first definition. Perform your duty equipped, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. So normally the verse 47th verse, which is this is 48th verse. In the 47th verse, Krishna is defining the art of work, right? And what is that art of work? So that art of work is karmani eva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadasichanam ma karma phale durbhur ma te sangosti akarmani. So this is the art of work. Our rights is to perform our prescribed duties, right? But we are not entitled to the fruit of the action. And then never considered, this is the third thing which is never considered, that the fruits or the results that we got is we are the cause of that result. To never think like, because there are many causes. There are 5 factors of actions, which is given in chapter 18 of Bhagavad-Gita. So we are one of the factor. Whenever we perform an action, we do an action, we get some results. So we are not the only cause. We need to understand that part. We are one of the cause. So, but if we think that, okay, this particular result has come because I did it, so that is wrong. So that is what Krishna is saying, that your entitlement is to just perform the work, to perform your duty. But you should not be entitled to the fruit of the action. The fruit of the action, if you claim entitlement for the fruit of the action, then what happens? Then we are caught by the cycle of action and reaction. We go into the karma bandhan. So therefore, Krishna is saying that never think also that the result has come because of me. And if the result does not come because of me, and if I should not enjoy the result, then why should I never work? So therefore, Krishna puts the last clause. He's saying, Mate sangostu akarmani. Never be attached to not doing your duty. Means you must act. You must act. So this was the previous verse. And in the next verse, Krishna is saying that act or perform your action in such a way. So performing your action in such a way is called as yoga. So therefore Krishna is saying, perform your duty equipoised, without getting attached to the success or failure of that particular action. Don't be attached to the success or failure. Just perform your action. So from Krishna's point of view, it is very important to understand that from Krishna's point of view, he is just seeing our efforts. He is not seeing the results, whether we are successful or not. If we have put efforts, according to Krishna's point of view, that is a success. But according to the world's worldview, people judge us by our success or failure. If we have failed, then the people around us, they will say, okay, this guy is a failure. They will just judge on the basis of the result, whereas Krishna is judging us on the basis of the action. So this is very, very liberating concept of Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna is saying, perform your duty equipoised. Oh Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. So just do your duty. Don't be attached to the success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So this is the first definition of yoga. As we were discussing, there are two definitions of yoga in chapter number 2. The first definition is 2.48, where it is defined that equanimity is yoga. Means you perform your duty equipoised. Now what is the second definition of yoga, which is defined in verse number 2.50. So in 2.50, Krishna is saying that a man engaged in devotional service gets rid of both good and bad reaction even in this life. So when we perform devotional service, we get rid of the reactions of that work even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is art of all duty. So therefore, this is actually what Krishna is saying, that yoga karmasu kaushalam is the art of work. Yoga is art of work. What is art of work? That has been defined earlier, right? So this is what Prabhupada is teaching over here in the purport, that one must perform the actions by this one single statement, and the action is to be judged whether it is pleasing to the Lord or whether it is displeasing the Lord. If it is pleasing to the Lord, then we are success, or our action is successful. This is the art of work. It's pleasing it has to be pleasing to the Lord. Next two verses. Jal ukasam jale vyadvan mahanto adanti aniyasaha durbalam balino rajan mahanto balino mitaha evam balister yadubir mahadbir itaran vibhu yadun yadubir anayoyam bhubaran sanjaharaha. O king, as in the ocean the bigger and stronger aquatics swallow up the smaller and weaker ones, so also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to lighten the burden of the earth, has engaged the stronger yadu to kill the weaker and the bigger yadu to kill the smaller. So this pastime is still Arjuna is continuing to discuss that this pastime which was performed by Krishna's will was to removing the burden. And removing the burden means, if the yadus will stay here, continue to stay in this material world, because they were so powerful, if they continue to stay after Krishna leaves this world, they will cause havoc. They will cause havoc in this world because they are so powerful. And when you have power, you don't know what to do actually. So you start, beating up the weaker sections of people. So they could cause havoc. So therefore Krishna wanted the yadus to be leaving this world or this planet before Krishna lives. So therefore he planned this. So the way the Krishna planned it was, the more powerful yadus will kill the weaker yadus, and the bigger ones, they kill the smaller ones, and the more powerful will kill the weaker sections. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that in the material world it is equivalent to the struggle for existence, right? Because the powerful ones are eliminating the weakers. So therefore it's a struggle for existence. So whoever is powerful will be the winner. The most powerful one will be the winner. So in the material world, the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest are laws, because in the material world there is disparity between conditioned souls due to everyone's desire to lord it over the material resources. This is the problem, that everybody or all of us come in this world to lord over, or every one of us has a desire to lord over the material resources. So resources are limited and we want to usurp all kind of resources for our enjoyment. Ultimately, it is the purpose of the whole the material existence is the living entity wants to enjoy in this material world. For enjoyment purpose, right? You need controller, and you want to become the proprietor. So if you are controller and you are the proprietor, then you become enjoyer. So in order to control, you need to own things. In order to own things, you need to have it, right? So this is the struggle which is going on. This very mentality of lording it over the material nature is a root cause of the conditioned life. And to give facility to such imitation lord, the illusory energy of the Lord has created a disparity between conditioned living beings by creating the stronger and the weaker in every species of life. So this we will see. Whether it's animal life or human life, there will be some portions who are stronger than the other portions, other living beings. And the stronger ones would always try to capture the weaker ones and beat up the weaker ones. The mentality of lording it over the material nature and the creation has naturally created disparity and therefore law of struggle for existence. So this is the law of the struggle of existence, where the superior or the more powerful is trying to control the weaker ones. In the spiritual world, there is no struggle for existence. So this is material world is struggle for existence. Spiritual world is equal to no struggle for existence. In the spiritual world, there is no such disparity, nor is there such a struggle for existence. In the spiritual world, there is no struggle for existence because everyone there exists eternally. So this is one of the things. And the center is common. Here, there are many different centers because everybody is trying to become the Lord. So they themselves become the center. And the other person is also trying to become the Lord. So that other person is also trying to become the center. Now these two centers, they collide with each other. That's the fight which is going on. And that collision is for lording. It's like, in India we see that, the street dogs. So they have their area. So you will see that particularly in the morning times, when we travel with some bike or something like that, then the dog will run after us or chase us. And they will chase us up to a certain area. They know their area. So they chase us up to that area and then they stop. Then another group of dogs will chase us. So this is a struggle for somebody who is traveling early in the morning, trying to go from one place to another. So this area, even the dog knows that this is my area. And the other dog will have this own region. So they will not cross the boundaries. They are the king in that. So who is that intruder? When we are passing from that area, the dog is thinking, who is that intruder? So it's very interesting, they are thinking like that. Why they have come or why they are going from my area. So that's why they are trying to chase us, because they think that this area is mine. So such kind of mentality actually we also have, we have all these big gated communities, and sometimes in the outside of the door it is written, be aware of dogs. So there are dogs inside who are protecting that community or that house, and they will be having some guards on the gate, and the guards will not allow us to. So that is their area. That is their dominion, and they don't want us to get in. In spiritual world, it is not. Those kind of things doesn't exist. In the spiritual world, there is no struggle for existence because everyone is there. There exists eternally. There is no disparity because everyone wants to render service to the Supreme Lord and no one wants to imitate the Lord in becoming the beneficiary. So there the purpose is completely different. Here the purpose is, I want to satisfy my needs, I want to satisfy my desires, I am the Lord of whatever I survey. So this is what is going on in this world. But in the spiritual world on the other side, we see that, the center is the Lord. Supreme Lord is the beneficiary. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam. Krishna is the center. Now that same thing can be brought in this world, and the place can be the temple. In the temple, Krishna is the center. So we always remember that, the boss of the temple is Krishna. And if we have that mentality, then we won't have fights among the devotees. Because Krishna becomes the center and he is the Bhokta. Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam. And everybody is trying to do. So these situations of the spiritual world can also be manifested in this material world, where Krishna becomes the center and can be experienced here. Right? So let me just stop this. Now, the Lord, being the creator of everything, including the living beings, factually is the proprietor and enjoyer of everything that be. But in the material world, by the spell of Maya or illusion, this eternal relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is forgotten, and so the living being is conditioned under laws of struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest. So this is what is going on in this world. But fortunately, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and mercy of Lord Caitanya, we are getting that opportunity back. So in temple, our consciousness should be that Krishna is the center, and then we treat, or our consciousness should be like that, and we should be not thinking that things should happen by my will or my way. Otherwise, there can be disparities even in this temple or any other temple. It doesn't matter. This can arise. But if we keep Krishna in center, then this kind of situation may not happen, and we can experience the spiritual world right over in this material world. Verse number 27. Desha kala artha yuktani rita tapo pasamani cha haranti smaratas chittam govinda bihitani me. Now I am attracted to those instructions imparted to me by the personality of Godhead Govinda, because they are impregnated with instructions for relieving the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. So this is spoken by Arjuna. So now this is one of the most important verse for all of us, relieving the heart. So Arjuna is feeling all this separation. The feeling of separation is very strong in Arjuna's heart. So to come out of that, what is Arjuna doing? So this is the solution. This is a solution part. So the solution is that Arjuna is now attracted to the instructions of Krishna. Now what instructions of Krishna? So Krishna instructed Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So Arjuna is now remembering those instructions, or he is going to remember those instructions. And as soon as he remembers those instructions, what happens? His heart or his mind becomes calm. Right? So these instructions relieve the burning heart. The instructions have power to relieve the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. So whatever be our current situation, or whatever difficult moment in life we are going through, if we can somehow or other bring up the instructions which are given to us in form of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, which were also given to Arjuna directly by Krishna, if we can somehow remember that, then our mind becomes completely calm. Right? Or will become completely calm. Our heart will get immediate relief. So this is a very nice purport. Prabhupada is giving the essence of the entire Bhagavad-Gita in this particular purport. So it's a very nice purport given by Srila Prabhupada. So let's read this. Bhagavad-Gita is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. So first paragraph Prabhupada is talking about, it's a essence of all Vedic. Like, we had this introduction to Bhagavad-Gita. So the introduction of the Bhagavad-Gita is a 30-page, article which Prabhupada, wrote before the entire Bhagavad-Gita was written. So that is like, in essence, summarizing the entire Bhagavad-Gita. Similarly, in this particular purport, is summarizing the instructions of Bhagavad-Gita in one purport. So it's a very important, very nice purport for all us to read whenever we go through the difficulties. Herein Arjuna refers to the instructions of Bhagavad Gita which were imparted to him by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The Lord left behind him the instructions of Bhagavad Gita not for the benefit of Arjuna alone, but also for all time and in all lands. So this is applicable for everybody. The instructions are not only for Arjuna, but it is for everyone, all of us, not only somebody born in India, but for every living entity actually. So just give me 1 second. The Bhagavad Gita, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom. It is nicely presented by the Lord himself for all who have very little time to go through the vast Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Vedanta Sutra. It is put within the study of the great historical epic Mahabharata, which was especially prepared for less intelligent class, namely the women, the liberal, and those who are worthless descendants of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and the higher sections of the Vaishyas. The problem which arose in the heart of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra was solved by the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Again, after the departure of the Lord from the vision of earthly people, when Arjuna was face to face with being vanquished in his acquired power and prominence, he wanted again to remember the great teachings of Bhagavad Gita, just to teach all concerned that Bhagavad Gita can be consulted in all critical times. So normally, we have understanding that, Bhagavad Gita is a very basic book. But here Arjuna is remembering the instructions which are given to him in Bhagavad Gita. And that was sufficient. So this one book is sufficient in itself. That shows how critical this Bhagavad Gita is and how important it is to study Bhagavad Gita regularly. So it's not only to study but take shelter of Bhagavad Gita regularly. So continuing, not only for solace from all kind of mental agonies, but also for the way out of great entanglement which may embrace one in some critical hour. So even at the time of death, somebody can remember the instructions. If they want, they can remember the instructions which are given in Bhagavad Gita. Then Prabhupada say, what one should do when the Lord is not in our presence. So in the time of difficulties, like, right now it is Arjuna who is going through the difficulties. Krishna is not in front of him. So what is Arjuna doing? So that is being discussed here. The merciful Lord left behind him the great teachings of Bhagavad Gita, so that one can take the instruction of the Lord even when he is not visible to material eyesight. Material senses cannot have any estimation of the Supreme Lord, but by his inconceivable power, the Lord can incarnate himself to the sense perception of the conditioned soul in suitable manner through the agency of matter, which is also another form of the Lord's manifested energy. Right? So Bhagavad Gita is actually spoken by the Lord himself. So therefore, The Bhagavad Gita is the Lord himself actually. It's a word spoken by him is as potent as the Lord himself. Thus, the Bhagavad Gita or any authentic scriptural sound representation of the Lord is also incarnation of the Lord. So this is all sound incarnation of the Lord. There is no difference between sound representation of the Lord and the Lord himself. So there is no difference between, as we have spoken many times, that there is no difference between Krishna's name, form, quality and pastimes, right? And Krishna himself. So there is absolutely not, because Krishna is absolute. So similarly, the sound which is there, the words of Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, a lot of devotees, they memorize the verses of Bhagavad Gita because it's very purifying. When we memorize the verses, it's very purifying because it has potency to purify us. The potency of Krishna, this energy of Krishna, right? Is Krishna himself. So by memorizing or reading these verses again and again, like during the Purushottam month, we normally read chapter number 15. So many devotees, they read the entire chapter. Some the devotees, they read the chapters daily, a chapter a day. So some devotees have different kinds of practices, but nevertheless, this kind of practice helps us in keeping in touch directly with Krishna, because these are all Krishna's words. One can derive the same benefit from Bhagavad Gita as Arjuna did in the personal presence of the Lord. A faithful human being who is desirous of being liberated from the clutches of the material existence can very easily take advantage of the Bhagavad Gita, and with this in view, the Lord instructed Arjuna as if Arjuna were in need of it. So this was actually for all of us. The Bhagavad Gita is meant for all of us, but Arjuna was made an instrument, and we've discussed this point many times, that he is not ignorant, because Krishna is using the word anaga in Bhagavad Gita, that you are not actually contaminated, you're pure, or you're not sinful. So because if somebody is sinful, then they are actually covered, or they are into illusion, they are put into illusion. So that is how somebody gets covered, because they are sinful. But Arjuna is not like that. Arjuna is a constant associate of Krishna, so he is not sinful. So for giving this book to us, or the message of Bhagavad Gita to us, Krishna made Arjuna as the instrument. Therefore Arjuna forgot everything. He was covered by Yogamaya, and he forgot everything. And then he started asking questions, and then the Lord started answering. So what did Krishna speak in Bhagavad Gita? That is explained in the next paragraph. So this is the entire what I was speaking in the beginning, that in a very concise form, Prabhupada has put the content of the Bhagavad Gita in this particular section. So let's read that. So first of all, Prabhupada is talking about the 5 factors. So these are some of the basics, but it is very important for us to, when from time to time, visit the basics. Like when I took a second initiation, at that time, one of the instruction Guru Maharaj had given was that in when we take second initiation, then we need to chant the Gayatri mantras. So there are different Gayatri mantras. So Maharaj said that from time to time, he gave me a paper, and he also gave a PDF format of that whole all the mantras. So he said that from time to time, open the PDF file and then read it. Because we are doing it every day, we chanting the Gayatri mantras, but from time to time again go and read it. So basics is going back to the basics. So of course we are doing it daily 3 times, but still sometimes we may be missing the purpose. Maybe we're doing mechanically. So when we revisit and read the document again, and we understand why we are doing what we are doing. So this is like going back to the basics. So here, whatever is given, we must have read it many times. But here Prabhupada very concisely summarizes the entire Bhagavad Gita in this next couple of paragraphs. In Bhagavad Gita, 5 important factors of knowledge have been delineated pertaining to the Supreme Lord. Who is the Supreme Lord? Who are the living beings? Then what is this material nature? What is time? What is time in skala and space? And the 5th one is the process of activity, or what is karma. So one is Supreme Lord, is the Supreme Lord is who is Ishvara. So the Sanskrit term is Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala and Karma. These are the 5 topics. So these are 5 topics actually. Baldev Vidyabhushan, Shrival Baldev Vidyabhushan, to whom Prabhupada dedicated this Bhagavad Gita. He categorizes that the entire message of Bhagavad Gita has these 5 important topics. Out of this, the Supreme Lord and the living beings are qualitatively one. So both are spiritual in nature. The difference between the two has been analyzed as difference between the whole and the part and parcel. So Krishna is the complete whole, and the living entity are parts and parcel of the Supreme Whole. And they are qualitatively one. It's like ocean water and a drop of ocean water. So qualitatively, the ocean water and the drop of ocean water is same. But quantitatively, these are 2 different things. So quantity wise, the ocean is Vibhu and the drop of water is Anu. It's very small. The difference between the two has been analyzed, the difference between the whole and the part and parcel. Nature is inert. Nature is inert matter, displaying the interactions of the 3 different modes and the eternal time and unlimited space are considered to be beyond the existence of the material nature. So the nature is or Prakriti is inert in nature, or it doesn't have consciousness. Is missing the consciousness, but this nature is actually working under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Activities of the living entities are being different varieties of aptitudes which can entrap or liberate the living beings within and without the material nature. So actions or karma is actually the process or the actions which we do, and these actions can be of 2 types. So one kind of action can actually liberate us, and apparently other kind of actions actually he binds us, entraps or binding, and other is liberating. Maybe the actions are same, like cooking or driving. So this from external point of view it looks same, but the consciousness behind the action actually differentiates whether the action is liberating or whether action is binding. All these subject matters are concisely discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, and later the subject matters are elaborated in Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment. So that's why when we do DYS courses, we talk about that that Bhagavad Gita is like the law book, and the Srimad Bhagavatam is like law journal. So whatever principles that are given in Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita is actually complete in itself, in a way that it contains all the principles. Whatever spiritual principles are there needed for us in this material world, they are all given in Bhagavad Gita. So it contains all the principles, but the details of how those principles can be lived by is given in Srimad Bhagavatam through examples. So therefore, Prabhupada is writing Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment. His subject matter are elaborated in Srimad Bhagavatam for further enlightenment. Out of the 5 subject matters, the Supreme Lord and the living entity and the nature and the time and the space are eternal. So some of them are eternal, but the living entity is nature, but the living entity, nature and the time are under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is absolute and completely independent of any other control. So these are eternal in nature. The Lord, the living entity, the Prakriti and the time and the space, they are eternal in nature, but the living entity and the Prakriti and the Kala, they are working under the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is actually absolute and complete independent of any other control. The one thing over here is the karma. So karma is not eternal, because karma can be changed, or Krishna can change the karma. So therefore it is not eternal. The Supreme Lord is the supreme controller. The material activities of the living being is beginningless, but it can be rectified by transfer into spiritual qualities. Yeah, so activities or the actions are also actually they are beginningless. Why beginningless? Because we don't know when it started. So the material activities which we are, the active actions which are not directed towards the Supreme Lord, they are material activities. And at what point of time it got transformed from spiritual to material, that way we don't know. Right? So therefore it is called as beginningless. But it is said that it can be rectified by transfer into spiritual qualities. So these actions which we are performing in this world can be spiritualized. Prabhupada uses the term spiritualized. Like if you take an iron rod and put it near the fire, the iron rod will slowly start getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and after a while it will become like a fire. So spiritualized means the consciousness behind that actions, when we are performing the actions, when the consciousness behind the actions is spiritual, then the action itself gets spiritualized. Thus it can cease its material qualitative reaction. So when the actions become spiritualized, it will not react, it will not give any material reaction. Both the Lord and the living entities are cognizant, right? They are aware, and both have sense of identification, right? Of being conscious as a living force. So both Lord and the living entities are having identity, right? Not false identity. Here it is talking about real ego, not the false ego. They both have identity. But the living being, under the condition of the material nature, called as Mahat Tattva, misidentifies himself as being different from the Lord. So this is our conditioned nature, where we identify ourselves not as a soul, but we identify ourselves as a body. So this is misidentifications, or this happens because of the false ego. The layer of false ego is given to, or covering of false ego is given to the living entity, and because of which the living entity starts misidentifying itself. The whole schema of Vedic wisdom is targeted to aim of eradicating such misconception and thus liberating the living being from illusion of material identification. So this is the goal of Vedic wisdom. The whole Vedic literature has been written for helping the living entity to transform its consciousness from material to spiritual. When such an illusion is eradicated by the knowledge and renunciation, jnana and vairagya, the living beings are responsible actors and enjoyers also. So when such illusion is removed by knowledge and renunciation, that we are not the lord of this material world, we are actually the servant. The living beings are responsible actors and enjoy. So then the living entity becomes responsible, and then they act responsibly, and they also enjoy being part and parcel of Krishna. So while performing devotional service, they are actually performing service, but even while performing service, they are actually enjoying. The sense of enjoyment in the Lord is real. So that kind of enjoyment when we are performing devotional service is actually real. But such a sense in the living being is a sort of wishful desire only. So this is very rare. That's what Prabhupada is trying to say. That this is enjoyment with the Lord while performing the service is real, but it is very, very uncommon. It's not very common. This difference in consciousness is the distinction of the two identities, namely Lord and the living beings. Okay. So this is the difference of this difference in consciousness is the distinction of the two identities, naming the Lord and the living. So living being in the conditioned state is thinking that he is an enjoyer and he wants to enjoy, but in the when the conditioning is removed, then there is no difference between this living entity and the in the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, there is no difference between the Lord and the living beings. This is what is being said over here. The living being is therefore eternally one and different simultaneously. Okay. So qualitative wise, or qualitatively it is one, but quantitatively it is different. The whole instruction of Bhagavad-Gita stands on this principle. In Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord and the living beings are both described as Sanatana or eternal, and the Lord's abode far beyond the material sky is also described as Sanatana. So Sanatana means eternal. The Lord is eternal, Lord's abode is eternal, Lord's pastimes are eternal, everything connected with the Lord are eternal. The living being is invited to live in the Sanatan existence of the Lord, and the process which can help a living being to approach the Lord's abode. The living being is invited to live in the Sanatan existence of the Lord, and the process which can help the living being to approach the Lord's abode. So, Lord is Sanatana and his abode is Sanatana, but the living entity is actually stuck in this material world. And therefore, the Lord, either he comes or he sends his representative to the material world to bring back those living entities who are stuck here. And those living entities, if they take the process, they can go back to the Sanatan world. So the living entity is being invited to live in the Sanatan existence of the Lord, and the process which can help the living being to approach the Lord's abode. So there is a process which is called as Abhideya. So knowing that the Lord is eternal, that is Sambandha Gyan. So first of all, knowing who is the Lord and his eternal abode, his pastime, knowing all these things, this is Sambandha, and what is our relationship with him. Like we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So all these things is the knowledge which is called as Sambandha Gyan. Now, after understanding this, then we want to go back to the Sanatan world. So if you want to go back to the Sanatan world, then there is a process. So that process is called as Abhideya. So here it is being discussed, a living entity is invited to live in the Sanatan existence of the Lord, and the process which can help a living being to approach this Lord's abode, where the liberated activity of the soul is exhibited, is called as Sanatan Dharma. So this Sanatan Dharma is the eternal Dharma of the living entity, or eternal position of the living entity. And the living entity is actually invited, and our Vedic wisdom, actually they describe all these processes, how to go back to Godhead. One cannot, however, reach the eternal abode of the Lord without being free from the misconception of material identification. So if we want to go back, we have to give up this identification. And that is the process of bhakti, right? So the process of bhakti is where one has to give up this misidentification or misconception. Okay, and the Bhagavad-Gita gives us the clue how to achieve this stage of perfection. So this is the whole message of Bhagavad-Gita. The process of being liberated from misconception of material identification is called, in different stages, fruitive activity. So these are different stages, which is also explained in Bhagavad-Gita. The yoga ladder. The process of being liberation can be happening in different based on the capacity of the person, or the understanding of the person. There are various stages. So these are called as ladders, and we have discussed about that, about the yoga ladder, which is being discussed here. The process of being liberated from the misconception of material identification is called, in different stages, fruitive activities. Right? Fruitive activities means karma kanda, empiric philosophy, jnana kanda, and devotional service, bhakti. So karma kanda, or karma yoga, or bhakti yoga, or different ashtanga yoga. There are so many yogas, different processes, up to the transcendental realization. Such transcendental realization is made possible by dovetailing all the above items in relation with the Lord. So this is easily possible by dovetailing our activities in the service of the Lord. Prescribed duties of the human, as directed in the Vedas, can gradually purify the sinful mind of the conditioned soul and raise him to the stage of knowledge. So the first part, which is discussed in the Vedas, is that when we perform our prescribed duties, then we can gradually purify our mind by performing the duties, means by following the Vedic instructions. When we perform our work, then that purifies our sinful tendencies, hence our mind is purified, and then we gain some knowledge. When the purification happens, the knowledge, jnana and vairagya, these are the two byproducts. Actually that is a byproduct of bhakti, but over here the knowledge is gained. The purified stage of acquiring knowledge becomes the basis of devotional service to the Lord. So once somebody gets a little purified or comes to the mode of goodness and has some knowledge, then that becomes the fundamental platform for performing the devotional service or bhakti. As long as one is engaged in reaching the solution of the problem of life, his knowledge is called jnana, or purified knowledge. But on realizing the actual solution of life, one becomes situated in the devotional service of the Lord. So the basic platform is the platform of knowledge or jnana, but then actual realization of once want to go back, then one need to perform the devotional service or bhakti. Without that, they cannot go back to Godhead. So jnana is the prior stage, and then bhakti is the advanced stage. Bhagavad-Gita begins with the problem of life by discriminating the soul from the elements of matter, and proves by all arguments and reasons and arguments that the soul is indestructible in all circumstances, and that the outer covering of the matter, the body and the mind, changes from one term of material existence which is full of misery. So this is about this chapter number 2, where it is talking about the difference between, this is talking about Sankhya actually. So Sankhya is difference between body and spirit, or matter and spirit. So the matter is destructible, whereas the soul, which is the driving force of the matter, is indestructible. So that is what is discussed here. The Bhagavad Gita is therefore meant for terminating all different kinds of miseries. Right? So the miseries are basically due to this temporary nature of the matter, because we are eternal and we are attached to the temporary matter. And when we get attached, then when we have to lose it, we get disturbed, and we become miserable in that we don't want to give it up. So the solution to that is given in Bhagavad Gita. That in Bhagavad Gita it's helping us to terminate the different kinds of miseries. So there are 7 different kinds of miseries, right? Birth, death, old age, and disease. This is the 4. And then there are tapatraya, which is the misery is caused by my own body and mind, the misery is caused by other living entities, and adhyatmic, adhibhautik, and adidevik, which is misery is caused by the devatas. So Bhagavad Gita helps us in terminating all these different kinds of miseries. And Arjuna took shelter of this great knowledge which had been imparted to him during Kurukshetra battle. So all this, what we have studied, this was all part of the discussion of Bhagavad Gita between, or this is a part of Krishna's instructions, which is there in Bhagavad Gita. In short, we see that at the time of difficulties, Arjuna is remembering or able to remember or focus on all this. Now it is not that easy actually when we are going through difficulties, especially when we are missing somebody who is very near and dear. And Krishna was very dear to Arjuna. So it was not easy for Arjuna to forget about him and then remember the instructions. But Arjuna is teaching by example that when we try to focus like this, then it is possible. Though it is difficult, it's possible. And this is a way to come out of this. This is a way to properly take shelter, or one must do like this to relieve the heart. Otherwise, the heart will not get relieved. So, what is Arjuna doing to get out of this feeling of voidness? He is saying that I am attracted to the Lord Govinda's instructions that relieves the burning heart in all circumstances of time and space. So he is remembering all these instructions of Krishna, which has been given in Bhagavad Gita. So, sorry. So 28 to 31 is talking about Arjuna situated in transcendence. Now let's read this. Any discussion so far? Any points to be discussed? Okay, if not, we'll continue. Verse number 28. So now the focus is turning to Suta Goswami. So far Arjuna was speaking, and now Suta Goswami is going to speak to the sages of Naimisharanya. So he is saying that Suta Vacha Evam Chintayato Jishno Krishna Pada Saroruham Sauradena Tig Adena Santa Sid Vimalamatihi. Suta Goswami said, thus being deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination. So just by thinking, just by Arjuna moving his mind's attention to the instruction of Krishna, what happened? His mind became pacified and he became free from all material contamination. But He had to do something. He got deeply absorbed in the thinking of the instructions. So it's just like not by hearing but deeply absorbed. So this is contemplation. Contemplation means when you hear and then you remember and then you contemplate on those subject matters, what you have heard. So that is called deep absorption. It is thinking about that whatever has been discussed between Arjuna and Krishna, whatever discussion happened. So he's thinking about it. So there's a nice picture which shows that Krishna is instructing Arjuna. So this is the beautiful picture from Bhagavad-Gita. All the Prabhupada disciples, they have drawn such nice pictures for us to meditate upon. So when we think about some subject matter of Bhagavad-Gita, we can also meditate upon this, scenes where we can think how Krishna is explaining to Arjuna. So this kind of vision our mind should be able to produce. Like whenever we are reading Bhagavad-Gita, whenever we are reading the verses, we should be able to see in our mind that there is a discussion between Krishna and Arjuna going on in the battlefield. And Krishna is speaking this, and then Arjuna is hearing, and then he's thinking about it, and he is responding by asking question. So that's what this picture gives us a very good idea of what is going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So Prabhupada in the purport is saying that Arjuna's deep meditation, since the Lord is absolute, deep meditation upon him is as good as yogic trance. Right? So meditating upon Krishna is as good as yogic trance. Yoga, the Ashtanga yogis, what they do is they sit in one place and they think about either the Lord, or they think about, sometimes they think about they are the Lord themselves. Different conceptions are there. But anyway, they are deeply absorbed in some thoughts. But we can be also deeply absorbed in thought by the process of actually thinking about the instructions of the Lord, whatever is given in Bhagavad Gita, or some verses. We can meditate upon many different things, or some pastimes of the Lord, or some form of the Lord. These are all meditation. So since the Lord is absolute, deep meditation upon him is as good as yogic trance. The Lord is non-different from his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. So all this particular point is very important to understand, that Krishna is non-different. Krishna is non-different from his name, form, quality. All these things are as potent as Krishna. Arjuna began to think of Lord's instruction to him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only those instructions began to eliminate the tinges of material contamination in the mind of Arjuna. The Lord is like the sun. The sun's appearance means immediate dissipation of darkness or ignorance, and the Lord's disappearance within the Lord's appearance within the mind of the devotee can at once drive away the miserable material effect. So it's a very nice way Prabhupada has put a very nice analogy, that when the sun comes, the darkness goes away. So similarly, when we start thinking about the instructions of the Lord in our heart, when we meditate upon that, then whatever is the situation, the miserable situation, material situation going on in our life, we can immediately come out of the miserable condition. Right? It can at once drive away. The same thing happened with Arjuna. He was like feeling very void, completely empty, because his dear friend is no more in front of him. But just by remembering Krishna's word, he became immediately, connected with him. for us, because of we don't have the same actually experience, and that is because of our contaminations. So we are not completely purified. But in case of Arjuna, he is the pure devotee of the Lord. So he could experience, like Srila Prabhupada could experience Krishna at any place. Right? Just by remembering Krishna, he will be with Krishna. He could remember Krishna in that way in any place. For us, we are going through the purificatory process of, when we purify ourselves, then gradually we can also experience the same thing. It's like, for years together, let's say there is a rust on a magnet. So that magnet will not have that same attraction, the quality of that attraction. The two magnets, when they brought closer to each other, right? They attract each other. But if the ions are rusted, if the magnet is rusted, then it will not have the same effect. So similarly, our condition is our consciousness is not completely purified. We are going through that purificatory process. So we may not experience the same thing as what Arjuna has experienced. But eventually, when we practice, when we get purified gradually, when our mind becomes purified, then we will experience the same thing just by saying the word Krishna. Like Rupa Goswami, he writes in his poem that how powerful is this word Krishna. Just by chanting the name of Krishna once, all my miseries go away. So the point is that we are not at that point. We don't experience. We still think that the name Krishna and Krishna, these are two different things. But those who get purified, we have to accept their words. We have to accept the words of the Acharyas. We have to accept the word of Prabhupada. We have to accept the word of Krishna himself. He's saying there's no difference between his name, quality, pastimes, all these things. So when we get purified, then we will experience the same thing. So now Prabhupada immediately points to Lord Caitanya. He's saying that Lord Caitanya has therefore recommended constant chanting of the name of the Lord for protection from all contamination of the material world. Kirtaniya Sadahari. So this is a recommendation of Lord Caitanya. Now, Caitanya Sadahari means that you are thinking of the Lord or remembering the Lord all the time. That will only happen when there are three conditions that needs to be met, right? Trinadapi sunichena taroreva sahisnuna amanena manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So we must be tolerant like a tree, more humbler than the grass, and we should be able to respect everyone. When we do this, then we can do kirtaniya sadahari. But in our stage, we should start practicing it, at least the first three things, and try to chant as much as we can. The feeling of separation from Lord is undoubtedly painful to the devotee, but because it is in connection with the Lord, it has specific transcendental effect which pacifies the heart. So the feeling of separation is definitely, it's not that easy. Now, we don't experience all these things, but Lord Chaitanya, he is explaining this particular thing, this particular rasa. Feeling of separations are also source of transcendental bliss. So this rasa is called as Vipralamba Bhava. Feeling of separation from Krishna. So we worship Krishna in this particular bhava, which is called as Vipralamba Bhava. Especially Lord Chaitanya's teaching is this Vipralamba Bhava. That is, feeling of separation are also sources of transcendental bliss. So this is actually blissful. When we, for us right now, we don't experience this Vipralamba Bhava. In material, when we lose something, we are actually really crying for that. We are not experiencing bliss. We are experiencing pain. We lose something, we experience pain. But spiritually, it is not the same. Feeling of separations are also a source of, it can be also a source of transcendental bliss, and they are never comparable to the contaminated material feeling of separation. So yeah, so right now we have this experience, contaminated material feeling of separation. But spiritual feelings are not like that, and our prayers to Lord Krishna, or our meeting with Lord Krishna is more in this particular rasa, which is the pralamba, feeling of separation from Krishna. So there are, I mean, most of you have heard of classes on this particular topic about Vipralamba Bhava, and there are many details given, and this is a very advanced topic. So it's recommended to hear this kind of topics from spiritually advanced people, like Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. So just to our knowledge, we just understand this term, and then we hear more about this subject matter from those advanced devotees, where they can talk in detail about this particular bhava. And in Nectar of Devotion also, this is discussed in details. What is this bhava, and what are the symptoms of this? But our way of approaching, our Lord Chaitanya's way of approaching, is approaching Krishna in this particular bhava, the feeling of separation from Krishna. We should not think that Krishna is with me, or I have seen Krishna. The devotee is always thinking, where is Krishna? When can I meet Krishna? So that kind of feeling is there. That is Vipralamba Bhava. Next, verse number 29. Vasudevangri anudyayana paribramhita ramhasa bhaktya nirmati te shesha keshaya disano Arjuna. Arjuna's constant remembrance of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna rapidly increased his devotion, and as a result, all the trash in his thought subsided. So, what is the trash in Arjuna's thoughts? So, the trash is not really trash actually, but basically he is thinking about this feeling of separation that is right now which is going on. But in our case, there is always a feeling of, there is a trash thoughts going on in our mind. So Prabhupada, therefore, he addresses us directly, and he's saying that what are the trash thoughts? Material desire in the mind are the trash of material contamination. So when the living entity comes in this world, the living entity is actually trying to lord over the material nature. So in order to lord over the material nature, he has all this desire sitting in the heart. I want to do this, I want to do that, so many things, so many desires are going in the mind. So those thoughts, Prabhupada is calling as trash thoughts. Now those thoughts, those trash thoughts are not there in Arjuna's mind. Remember, he is a constant, he is always accompanies Krishna. So his thoughts are also connected with Krishna. So these are not actually trash thoughts. But in our case, there are trash thoughts. Now, what are the result of this trash thoughts? By such contamination, the living being is faced with so many compatible and incompatible things that discourage the very existence of spiritual identity. Right? So, because of these thoughts, these are thoughts going on in our mind, and mostly it is to lord over the material nature. Because of this thought, what happens is, it is actually incompatible to our spiritual identity, incompatible to our identity as a soul. Birth after birth, the conditioned soul is entrapped with so many pleasing and displeasing elements. So the living entity is going through so many ups and downs basically in this material world. He is coming in contact with so many material pleasure and displeasures, which are all false and temporary. But to us, it appears it is all eternal. All this happiness and unhappiness in this world, this all appears to us as permanent, right? Isn't it? When we go through this, any ups and downs, it appears like this is going on for, or this is eternal, but these are actually all temporary. Then we experience this, or we have experienced we are experiencing some ups and downs in this life. We have experienced that so many times, but we forget about it. So therefore we feel that this has happened to me, and then this is the end of the world. So we go through so many, mind takes us through a wild ride, we can say like that. And they accumulate due to our reactions to the material desire. So this is all whatever is going on is reactions to all our material desires, the reason for which we have come here, for lording over the material nature. So these are the results of our trash. So first of all, Prabhupada is talking about the trash thoughts. What are trash thoughts? Then he is saying, what are the result of this trash thought? Basically, we are going through the cycle of birth and death. We are going from one body to another body. That is what is going. So what is the solution to this? So then Prabhupada says, but when we get in touch with the transcendental Lord in his variegated energies by devotional service, the naked form of all the material desires become manifest. And the intelligence of the living being is pacified in its true color. So we understand what is the real thing actually. When we come in contact with the transcendence, or we come with contact with the Lord or his devotees. As soon as Arjuna turned his attention towards the instruction of the Lord, as they are inculcated in Bhagavad-Gita, his true color of eternal association with the Lord became manifest, and thus he felt freed from all material contamination. So as soon as basically he got the spiritual knowledge, he started feeling free from the material contaminations. So the solution to this is, to the trash thoughts of the material world, is coming in contact with the spiritual knowledge, or coming in contact with the Lord, or coming in contact with the Lord or his devotees. So when we associated with something transcendental, our consciousness is uplifted. And then what happens is, we immediately get situated in transcendence. And then we can become free from all material contaminations. Verse number 30. Gitam Bhagavata Jnanam Yattat Sangrama Murdhani Kala Karma Tamoruddham Punar Adyagamat Prabhu. Because of the Lord's pastime and activities, and because of his absence, it appeared that Lord Arjuna forgot the instruction left by the personality of Godhead. So earlier, when Arjuna was going through that experience, he was feeling morose, he was feeling void, he was feeling dejected. So it appeared that he forgot all the instructions which were left by the personality of Godhead. But factually, this was not the case. And again, he became the lord of his senses. Right? So it appeared that Arjuna became slave of his senses. So when we are going through these cycles of ups and downs in this material world, we are actually slave of our senses. Our senses are controlling the mind, and the mind is controlling the intelligence. Right? In Bhagavad-Gita, it's in chapter number 3, it says, Indrani pararahu Indriyebhya paramana manasastu parabuddhi yo buddhi parasastu saha. So in our conditioned state, the sense objects control the senses, and then the senses control the mind controls the intelligence controls the soul. So it is going backwards, where the sense object is actually capturing our mind and intelligence, right? And then that means we are actually slave of our senses. But when our soul is directing or controlling the senses, so from soul is controlling the intelligence, intelligence is controlling the mind is controlling the senses is controlling the sense objects. In that case, the soul is the controller, right? So when the soul is the controller, then at that situation we are called as the lord of the senses, because we are controlling the senses. So here this last line is saying, but factually this was not the case, and he became lord of the senses. So Arjuna did not forget. He did not forget the instructions which were given to him. He remembered it, and he could recollect what was the discussion between Krishna and between him and Krishna. For us, it is difficult. So we read something today and then we forget in another half an hour. We will forget things. So what we have to do is we have to keep practicing. We have to keep practicing. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada has established that in the temple there will be always, in the morning there will be Bhagavatam class, and then in the evening again there will be Bhagavad-Gita class, and the chanting and all this other full of engagement, devotional engagement. So why was that done? That was done for us to constantly remember the message of Lord, or constantly keep us in touch with the transcendence. So that will help us to always remain the Lord of our senses. So that was the purpose of doing it. Now the difference between Lord and the living entity. What is this discussed here? Prabhupada is saying that the conditioned living soul is enwrapped in his fruitive activities by the force of eternal time. So the Kala is the force which is driving our karma, and we perform one action after another action after another action. We keep on doing actions one after another, and that is driven by the Kala, eternal time. But the Supreme Lord, when he incarnates on the earth, is not influenced by Kala. So Supreme Lord is not influenced by Kala or karma, but we are, or the material conception of past, present and future. So for Krishna, he is not beyond the Kala or the time, or he is not influenced by the time. Activities of the Lord are eternal, and they are manifestation of his Atma Maya, or internal potency. So Lord's activity are performed by his internal potency. All pastimes or activities of the Lord are spiritual in nature, but to the layman they appear to be in the same level with the material activities. So for outsider who doesn't understand Krishna, they think that Krishna's activities are same as my activity. So if Sri Krishna can do rasa dance with so many ladies, I can also do that. So they start thinking like that. Right? But they forget that Krishna has expanded with each of the gopis. He has expanded, and he is performing dance with each of them. Or in other words, each of them are feeling that Krishna is with them only. Right? So that they forget. So therefore, this verse is very important, that to understand that Krishna's activities, janma karma cha me divyam, yo evam yo veti tato. Krishna's birth and activities are not normal, they are divyam. And just by understanding that, then we can go to spiritual world. So this verse, therefore, if of all the lectures, I think Srila Prabhupada has given so many lectures on this particular verse. Janma karma cha me divyam. This verse is very, very important for all of us, all the devotees. When we read Krishna's pastime, we should always remember that Krishna is not an ordinary personality. He is the Supreme Lord. Therefore, also Prabhupada says that when we read Bhagavatam, we should not directly go to Krishna's internal pastimes or pastimes with the gopis in the 10th canto. So there are 9 cantos, and we go to the 10th. We cannot directly approach the 10th canto, because if we directly approach the 10th canto and when we read the interaction of Krishna with the gopis, we think that whatever is Krishna talking with them, or whatever is discussing with them, whatever pastimes is having with the gopis, it's like mundane in nature. So therefore we need to go from canto 1 to and understand the tattva of Krishna before going to the rasa. So first 9 canto builds up that tattva and explains the personality of Krishna, who he is. And then we can go and understand. Still we don't understand, So therefore we should not read we should try, even if you want to understand, we need to understand it from very advanced devotees, from the mouth of very advanced devotees. We should hear those classes if you want to understand those rasa pastimes, because then they explain the internal details of Krishna Tattva and the rasa also. So Prabhupada talks about revival of Arjuna's consciousness. So it so appeared that Arjuna and the Lord were engaged in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, as the other party was also engaged, but factually the Lord was executing his mission of incarnation and association with his eternal friend Arjuna. Therefore, such apparently material activities of Arjuna did not drive him away from his transcendental position, but on the contrary revived his consciousness of the songs of the Lord as he sang them personally. So though Arjuna got sidetracked, we can say he got sidetracked. So Bhagavad-Gita was spoken, and then immediately the war happened. Right? So from the external point of view, it appears that it's a mundane activity. A war is going on. Arjuna is killing so many of his relatives and friends. He's engaging with them in the battlefield and he's killing them. But this was actually the mission of the Lord. And once the war was over and when it was required, Krishna himself gave him the remembrance. Even if you have forgotten, Krishna himself will give the remembrance. Because Arjuna acted on behalf of Krishna's will. So Arjuna didn't desire to fight. Right? This was actually Krishna's will. This was the purpose of Krishna's or mission of the incarnation of Krishna. Paritranaya sadhuna vinasaya cha dushkrita dharma samstarpanarthaya. 4.7 and 4.8 of Bhagavad-Gita. Yada yada hi dharmasya, right? When the dharma is declined, Krishna comes and he re-establishes dharma and he annihilates all the miscreants. So this was part of Krishna's plan and Arjuna participated. But before participating in this war, the whole Bhagavad-Gita discussion happens. So it looks like Arjuna forgot because he participated in the war and he forgot. Because we think in our terms. When we read Bhagavad-Gita chapter 1 and we go to chapter 2, then our chapter 1 slightly fades. Then we go to chapter 3 and we start reading chapter 3, then chapter 2 slowly fades and chapter 1 is almost gone. So something like that. We are at chapter number 5, then we completely forgot what is there in chapter number 2, 3 and 4. So we think in our terms. So therefore, basically, here we might be thinking that, Arjuna forgot everything. But actually that has not happened. So this revival of consciousness is assured by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita, say 1865. So this, we need to also know that, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that Mattaha smriti jnanam apohanam cha. Chapter 15, verse number 15. By me alone, by me, somebody remembers or somebody forgets things. So this remembrance and forgetfulness is given by Krishna himself. So this revival of this particular consciousness is in Krishna's hand. So therefore Krishna is saying in Bhagavad-Gita in 1865 that the revival of consciousness is assured by the Lord in Bhagavad-Gita 1865 as follows. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyajim nam namaskuru mamev aishyasi satyamte prati jane priyosim. So Krishna is saying that when you think about me like this, you always think of me. It's a very important verse. This verse 18.65. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vashyasi satyam te pratijane priyosima. So this is the Charam sloka of Bhagavad Gita is 1866. Yeah. Sarva dharman parityaja. So Ramanujacharya he explains that the Charam sloka, or the most important sloka of Bhagavad Gita is 1866. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vrajan. This is a verse one before that, 1865, where Krishna is saying, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me and offer homage unto me. Basically, you are constantly thinking about Krishna. So when you are doing that, what Krishna is saying, thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. This is a direct promise made by Krishna to Arjuna. And same is applied to us. If we always think of Krishna, he become his devotee, we worship him and pay our homage to him, then what happens is we can go to Krishna. Or Krishna, he gives a promise that you become very dear, you are very dear, and you become very dear to me, and you will come back to me without fail. Ma me vaishyasi satyam te. Truly you will come to me. Yeah, satyam means true. So Krishna never lies like that. He is going to take us back. So Prabhupada, this purport is very important for all of us to understand, because this is like one verse before the Charam Sloka. And Prabhupada in the purport is saying that the most confidential part of the knowledge is that one should become pure devotee of Krishna and always think of him and act for him. One should not become official meditator. One should not be a meditator. Life should be molded that one always have chance to think of Krishna. So our life should be such guided, or such, put it in such a way, or designed in such a way that you always have chance to think of Krishna. There are many ways, devotees do. They put, if they are working in computers, they put the wallpaper as Krishna's paper, or in front of their wall they will have Krishna's picture. So, there are multiple ways in which we can think of Krishna. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are in connection with Krishna. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours he cannot but think of Krishna. And the Lord promises that anyone who is in such pure Krishna consciousness will certainly return to the abode of Krishna, where he will be engaged in association of Krishna face to face. This most confidential part of the knowledge is spoken to Arjuna because he is his very dear friend of Krishna. Everyone who follows the path of Arjuna can become a dear friend to Krishna and obtain the same perfection as Arjuna. So we have to follow the same path as what Arjuna is doing, and then we can become very, very dear to Krishna. Now, Prabhupada in this last paragraph gives us a very important point. So which particular form should we meditate upon? Because here Krishna is saying, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer homage unto me, and all these things, right? Now, which form? Right? So Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita, he clarifies that. These words stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna. Right? Because we have to concentrate our mind upon Krishna. So now, in order to concentrate, what form of Krishna should we concentrate? Right? So then Prabhupada is saying, this word stress that one should concentrate his mind upon Krishna, the very form with two hands carrying a flute. So he is now describing the form of Krishna we should meditate upon, carrying a flute, the bluish boy with beautiful face and peacock feather in his hair. There are descriptions of Krishna found in Brahma Samhita and other literatures. One should fix his mind on this original form of Godhead Krishna. Okay, so because we have, we are following or we are Rupanugas. Actually, our Sampradaya Acharya is Rupa Goswami. So we are following Rupa Goswami. So we are Rupanuga. Srila Prabhupada is also Rupanuga. Our Guru Maharaj, all of them are Rupanugas. So to the Rupanugas who have taken initiation or who are following Srila Prabhupada or following ISKCON, this is very important instruction where Prabhupada is saying one should fix his mind on the original form of Godhead Krishna. One should not even divert his attention to other form of the Lord. So Lord has multi forms, many forms. So where should we put our attention? To the original form of Krishna, the Godhead. And Prabhupada has given enough description of which form. He's saying one who is carrying a flute, who is a bluish boy, who is carrying a peacock feather in his hair, and all this description of Krishna is given. One should not even divert his attention to other form of the Lord. The Lord has multi-form as Vishnu. Now this is more clear. Lord has multi-form as Vishnu, Narayan, Rama, Vara, etc. But a devotee should concentrate his mind on the form that was present before Arjuna, means Swayam Bhagavan Krishna. Concentration of the mind on the form of Krishna constitutes the most confidential part of the knowledge. And this is disclosed to Arjuna because Arjuna is the most dear friend of Krishna. So, what to focus, what form to focus, it's very clear when we read the purports given to us by Srila Prabhupada. So one should not think of the Lord always. One should think of the Lord always. The mind should not forget Him. One should become a devotee of the Lord and offer obeisance unto Him. One who lives in that fashion becomes undoubtedly endowed with the blessings of the Lord by achieving the shelter of His lotus feet. There is nothing to doubt about this eternal truth. Because Arjuna was his confidential friend, the secret was disclosed to him. In the last paragraph, Prabhupada says, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his relatives. So this was not Arjuna's desire. He says in the beginning of Bhagavad-Gita. That was his whole argument. I don't want to fight. In the chapter 1, all the discussion is about this. But he fought for the mission of the Lord. He was always engaged in the execution of his mission only. His means Lord's mission only. And therefore, after the Lord's departure, he remained in the same transcendental position, even though it appeared that he forgot all the instructions of Bhagavad-Gita. So because he was acting on behalf of the Lord is protecting him. Right? So same is the situation with us. Prabhupada is saying in the last line, one should therefore adjust the activities of the life in pace with the mission of the Lord. Right? And by doing this, one is sure to return back home, back to Godhead. This is the highest perfection of life. So if we just follow on this one thing, we always align our life in such a way that our life is governed by only one direction, which is doing with or following the instruction of the Lord, or it must be aligned with the mission of the Lord. If we just do this, then what happens? Then we have a guarantee to go back to Godhead. Krishna himself gives guarantees. Mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosim. Then we become very dear to the Lord. And then we can go back to Him very easily. And Prabhupada calls this as the highest perfection of life. So it's 9:02. Unless we have any discussion, we will stop here. Any points to be discussed? Okay, so we'll stop here. Thank you so much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Maharaj Yudhishthir ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arjuna Dev ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the class.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.